I work as a mechanic at a car shop in my town. It's a small, locally owned repair place that's been around for years. The shop operates out of an old warehouse, with broken down cars and car parts sitting outside in what we call the scrapyard. It's mostly just cars waiting for parts. For the past 2 years, my job has been to order and keep track of stock. The best time to do this is when it's not busy, so I often work overnight. This means I also act as a security guard, as it's common for people to jump the fence and try to steal stuff from the scrapyard. One night I started work at 8 p.m. I chatted with my boss for a bit before he left, leaving me alone in the warehouse. It was raining hard, making it noisy inside but kind of calming too. I did my usual routine, checking the orders the mechanics had sent in and seeing what parts were used during the day. Everything seemed normal, except for 2 cars needing specific parts. One mechanic didn't write down the model year for a gray Nissan Versa, which can be really important. I got up from my desk and looked around the warehouse for the gray Nissan Versa, but I couldn't find it. I sighed, knowing it had to be in the scrapyard. Of course it had to be raining. After a quick coffee break, I grabbed my jacket and flashlight and went to the back door. The rain had picked up since I was last outside, but I could see the car I was looking for between a few other vehicles. I stepped into the rain and started walking over, turning on my flashlight. As I got to the center of the scrapyard, I saw something move in front of me and stopped in my tracks. It was at the edge of my flashlight's beam, and it looked like a person moving behind one of the cars. The rain drowned out any sound, so I just stood there, holding my flashlight up, waiting for more movement. "Hello, I saw you." "Just get out of here," I yelled, hoping it was just some kid messing around. I took a few steps closer and yelled again for them to leave. I didn't see anything, so I moved closer and looked around, but whoever it was must have left already. I was relieved I didn't have to call the cops. I quickly got the model year from the Nissan and jogged back to the warehouse. I took off my jacket, sat at the desk, and sent the order through. I spent another half hour filling out more order requests, then started counting stock in the warehouse. It was probably around 12:30 or 1 a.m. by then. I walked along the shelves, checking what parts had been used. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the warehouse, and then the lights went out. I stood there, staring into the dark. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear footsteps coming toward me over the sound of the rain hitting the roof. I knew someone was inside and had shut off the power. I didn't know why they were there, and without light, I couldn't even run away. All I could do was listen to the footsteps getting closer. They stopped about 10 feet away. I heard a box open and things being moved around before the footsteps started going away. I held my breath the whole time. After 30 seconds of silence, I took out my phone and called 911. Using the flashlight on my phone, I went to the breaker room and flipped the power back on. When the police arrived, we found wet shoe prints leading through the warehouse and out the back door. It seemed like the person had slipped in while I was outside, and the door was still unlocked. They stole a bunch of gear from our warehouse. Even though they didn't seem to want to hurt me, who knows what could have happened if they knew I was only a few feet away? And without ever getting a look at them, there's a chance they were fully armed and ready to do anything. I had just gotten home from work and was relaxing on the couch with a movie on. It was storming outside, and being a Friday night, I decided to stay up late and watch TV. The window curtains were open in case there was lightning, because it doesn't rain much where I live, and I love watching storms. Around midnight, I noticed a man outside my window across the street. He was walking down the sidewalk without a hood or coat, completely soaked. He walked up to a house and stood on the porch. It looked like he was waiting for someone to open the door. After a minute, he went back to the sidewalk and continued down the street. Seeing this made me uneasy. It was late, and the weather was bad, so it was strange for someone to be walking around and going up to houses. I closed the curtains, not wanting him to see me if he came to my house. About 15 minutes later, I heard someone walking up my driveway to my front door. There was no knock or doorbell, but I could hear them moving around, walking across my porch and near one of the windows, then back to the door. I was confused and a bit scared, so I didn't look out the peephole. I waited, and after a minute, there were no more sounds. I quietly walked to the door and looked out. It was the same man, standing at the edge of my porch, staring at the door with a blank expression. I got really creeped out and backed away. I thought about calling the police, especially if he was going to other houses too. I turned to get my phone, but then I heard footsteps leaving. I looked out again, and he was gone. Feeling unsettled, I decided to call the police. I told them about the man, and they said they'd send an officer to patrol the neighborhood. I thanked them, hung up, and checked the door again before going back to the couch. The whole thing had ruined my relaxing night and left me exhausted. I shut everything off and went upstairs to bed. As I got into bed and turned off the lights, I heard a loud thump from downstairs. I sat up, and it happened again. It was like someone was smashing something against the wall. I ran to the top of the stairs and realized it was at the front door. Someone was trying to break it down. Terrified, I locked myself in the bedroom and called the police again. The operator said an officer was nearby and would be there soon. While on the call, I heard the door break down and footsteps rushing through the house. They were moving quickly from room to room. The intruder started coming up the stairs, but then I heard the officer arrive and shout. The intruder ran for the back door but struggled to open it. The officer caught him and took him into custody. The man, who looked crazy, refused to say anything. He had a heavy hammer and zip ties in his pockets, making it clear he had bad intentions. I don't know why he chose my house, but calling the police the first time probably saved me. If I hadn't, the officer wouldn't have been nearby, and who knows what could have happened to me. This happened last year at the start of spring. We had a really rainy month with constant downpours, from light drizzles to full-on storms. I do deliveries for a popular restaurant in my area, and running through the rain to pick up and drop off orders wasn't fun. The night started like any other. I got to work at 6 p.m. and delivered a few orders. Then, I got one that was pretty far away, about 10 miles from the restaurant, in the woodsy part of town. It wasn't all forest, but it was more spread out and less populated. The roads were covered by trees, and most neighborhoods were hidden from the main roads. While driving, there was only one car behind me. It wasn't weird, just an empty road. About 2 miles in, headlights appeared in front of me out of nowhere. A car swerved and stopped in the middle of the road, blocking it completely. I slammed on my brakes, barely avoiding a collision. The car behind me stopped just in time too. In front of me was a beat-up sedan with its brights on, making it impossible to see inside. It seemed like they had turned on their headlights at the last second before swerving. I couldn't tell where they came from, it was too dark. The car behind me honked, clearly frustrated. I should have been more skeptical, but in the moment, it was hard to think straight. The car behind was too close for me to back up, and the car in front was blocking the way. I was stuck. The guy behind me stopped honking and got out of his car. I saw a large man walk through the rain, looking furious. He went up to the other car and started yelling at the driver. I couldn't hear much because of the rain, and I couldn't see any response from the other driver. The man outside banged on the window a few times, then suddenly stopped and backed away, looking nervous. He walked back to his car, but as he was getting in, the other car's door opened. A man wearing a thick hoodie stepped out, covering most of his face. I was really freaked out. I had no way of leaving except running into the woods, which seemed like a terrible idea. I watched as the hooded man quickly walked up to the car behind me. Just as he reached the door, the car floored it in reverse. The tires screeched, and the car slid off the road, crashing into the woods and hitting a tree. The hooded man turned and looked at my car, making eye contact with me in my side mirror. Horrified, I put my car in reverse and sped away. I called the police but had no idea what was happening. An officer arrived about 15 minutes after I left. They found the car in the woods, but the other car and the men were gone. We can all guess what probably happened, but there are still so many unanswered questions. If the guy behind me hadn't been there, I might have ended up in his place.